Handmade Designs. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a sterling silver hand stamped necklace. I'm using a 1-inch 22 gauge silver disc, a sterling silver jump ring. You're going to need some basic tools that you can get easily at a craft store like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. You can also go to the Rio Grande website and get a kit, which includes a steel block, which you need in order for your stamp to make an impression. These are all steel stamps. Each individual letter you stamp yourself. You need a Sharpie and a hammer. You can even use just a regular hammer. I like the one that I find in Rio Grande. It's got a pretty wide hammer base so that you can make sure that you strike your steel stamp very easily. You don't miss it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I am going to be making a teacher necklace, so I'm going to be spacing out my letters along the bottom curve of the necklace of the disc first. And so what I like to do is play around with my Sharpie and space it out so that when I go to stamp, I know exactly where I'm going to strike, and I know it's going to fit. So I figure out all my spacing before I do any striking whatsoever. So on this one, I'm going to be, by the way, either side is fine because I'm going to also be hammering the edges when I'm done. So it doesn't matter what side you use. So along the bottom edge, I'm going to actually start anywhere because I have a clean slate. I'm going to, if you would like to zoom in and see the detail of what I'm doing. The 3 words that I'm putting along the bottom are teach, love, inspire. So I'm going to make little marks where I'm going to be striking, leaving a little bit of space in between. And if I mess up, I can always rub it off with a polishing cloth. That is another thing that you need. You can also get this at Rio Grande or online. I know you could even get them at places like Target and Walmart. If you mess up and you say, oh no, I don't want that spacing that way, you simply take your marker and draw over the top of where you drew and then buff it out really quickly. It's harder to remove once the ink has dried, so try to do it in a timely manner. So I'm also going to be putting a letter in the middle, but I think I'm going to wait until after I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first letter, and I'm using 3 different fonts. I'm using Yummy lowercase, Comic Sans, and a lowercase typewriter. So I'm going to do each word in a different font, and it all depends on how you want it to look. You can put each individual letter right on top of each black dot that you've drawn, and it's up to you how close you want to the edge. You kind of get to know your stamps the more you use them. Some are not perfectly aligned in the middle across the board, and some are very different when it comes to the height of the letter. For instance, a O might be smaller than a D or an L because of the length of the letter. Just depends on the font that you get, and you kind of have to study each font set when you get it to see what you'll be working with. So I'm going to go with teach first, and I'm going to use my Yummy lowercase. I take my letter, I take my hammer, and I'm going to place the stamp directly on the very first dot. And you don't have to whack the heck out of it. Place it down. I just do a couple light taps. You can do one. You kind of have to figure this out as you're learning. What's the best pressure that you put on it. It will also depend on what metal you're using. Copper is super soft and you barely need to tap it. Silver is a little bit harder. Same with gold is a little bit softer, not quite as soft as copper. So there is a lot of trial and error, and what I like about stamping is that it is very organic, so you can you don't have to worry about it all being the same depth. It just adds to the character of your handmade piece. This is not done by machine. It is done by a human being, and so it is okay to have some irregularity. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. As you get going, you a lot of times have to put your hand some irregularity and bending occurs because whenever you manipulate a metal, whatever you're pushing down kind of gets pushed out and around. So I just turn it over, and I like to protect the front part of my metal. So I just put my polishing cloth down, and I take a rubber mallet and I even it out. You can do both sides if you want. This is not going to damage your disc at all. Then I'm going to put the letter in the middle, and this is a 6mm font. The bigger the font, the more difficult it is to create an even impression when you're stamping. So this definitely takes some practice. I'm going to place this right in the center, and I just eyeball it. I eyeball most things. Some people like to measure, but that never works out for me. Definitely have to hammer that a little harder. And then I'm going to make a dot where I'm going to make a hole. Actually, move it over a little bit. And I'm going to use my hole punch, which you could also get at a craft store or at Rio. I'm going to place it right over the dot. Okay, now comes the fun part. I'm going to hammer the edges, but this has a rounded round nose plier. And I'm going to this is totally up to you. You can hammer slightly on the edges. You can hammer the whole thing. You can, it doesn't have to be even. I'm gonna flatten this out a little bit. I'm going to just hammer the edges. One thing I will say is you have to make sure that when you are doing this kind of work that you don't do it right after you've had a strong cup of coffee, because if your hands are shaky, it will show in your work, which is hard for me because I love my coffee. Okay, now I'm going to take my Sharpie, my permanent Sharpie, and I'm going to just go over the impressions the letter impressions. Oh, I forgot to add my dot in between each word. I'm actually going to put a little dot, and you don't have to make a mark with your Sharpie before you do this if you don't want. I just eyeball it. Okay. Take your Sharpie, color over your letters, and then quickly write them, wipe them. Your polishing cloth is also going to make your silver nice and shiny. Take off any fingerprints. This is just the faster way of darkening the letters. You can also dip your entire piece in liver of sulfur, and you can find that online, and anyone can order from Rio Grande. So that's it for the lettering. I'm just gonna buff it out a little bit more. And you can take a lot more time buffing it out. You can also put it in a tumbler and make it super shiny. I'm just gonna do this really quick. I'm going to add my jump ring. Open it up with some needle nose pliers. Put the jump ring through the hole. And that is it. I'm going to add it to a chain, and you can add any embellishments like a crystal or a pearl or a natural stone, which I'll show in another video how to wire wrap a stone. You can also add charms or other discs. And there you go. Thank you for watching.